But we all have that thing that plays in our mind constantly is you're not good enough, which as a child, that's what I may not have been physically told that, like out of their mouth, but they might as well just came right
Yeah.
out and said, you're never
Well,
good
look,
enough. You're not going to be able to do
their
anything.
ambivalence towards you, Melissa, showed they didn't care that you weren't into them, that
Right,
you were not valued by them. So their actions spoke much louder than if they said any blunt words.
right. And, then that's what you feel as a person. That's what you
Yes.
think. It's like, oh, I'm never good enough. Just like, for instance, and I'm just, this interview or my YouTube channel, I'm sitting here shrinking going, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I'm just like, no, I'm going to
Yes.
stop that because I want my grandkids to see, hey, Grammy got over this. Grammy, look what she did. Look what Grammy taught us. You know, like you said earlier about the generational curse, I want to break
Yes.
that. I want to break that even with my grandchildren. I mean, because my dad is still living. In fact, he lives with us. And that's another reason why I went to therapy is because I'm basically having to take care of him, and that's
Yeah.
difficult. Not gonna lie. Um, there's a lot of things that he has changed. He quit drinking, but it's still the
Yes.
mental part still there. I saw a thing on YouTube or Instagram, and it said, the ones that are in therapy are not really the ones that need to be in therapy because they're not the ones that caused you to be in therapy.
Yeah. I think
You know,
often, Melissa, like my dad was my perpetrator in my trauma. And like the thought of him going to therapy, he's too prideful, he's too narcissistic. And quite frankly, at this point at his age, he's probably not all mentally there anymore to even like process what he did. And I think part of what helped me process my own trauma was knowing the trauma he went through. His dad was an alcoholic. His dad was physically abusive and mentally berating, saying really ugly things towards him. And so that's what he learned. That's what he said. Okay, that's how you grow up, kids. And so he knew the alcohol was bad. He became a cop, and then he only beat me and berated me. He didn't drink alcohol. So have you ever looked at or
right.
talked to your dad about? I know the relationship is strained, but have you ever looked at how was he treated maybe as a child that may have passed down the trauma to you?
You know, I get little glimpses every once in a while and little snippets that he'll say. And I do know that my granny, his mother, was an alcoholic. And she had a lot of issues. She was very abusive to my grandpa. Um, my dad was the youngest of three boys, so he was the baby. So anything he wanted, anything, he did no wrong, to whereas that went with me as, since I was the grandchild, I did no
Yeah.
wrong. You know, I was allowed to do
So
whatever.
the apple didn't fall far from the tree, is what I'm hearing, and that he just picked up their habits,
Right.
no consequences to any. Like in a way, I'm kind of glad. No,
Exactly.
I'm not, but I'm kind of glad I got beat because then I realized consequences. But then it wasn't for bad action; it was just for no reason at all. So instead of getting beat,
Right.
it was just ambivalence that your dad went through. And so he passed that down to you. Oh, haha, you're 1.5 years old. You're drinking my beer. Let's make a joke about that.
Right, right. And, even now he thinks that he should not suffer any consequences or that, yeah, or everything, should revolve around him. And, then it's like, well, typical narcissist, well, it's my fault because something happened, or, well, you shouldn't have done that, or whatever. And, you know, you get that still every single day, and it's tough. It really is tough. And you have to go somewhere in your brain and you have to go, okay, no, this is not my problem, and I need to set boundaries.
Yes, the boundaries is so big. Like it's gotten so bad with me, Melissa. I haven't talked to my dad in 2.5 years. Like he's not interested in my life. I'm not really interested in his life. Like it's just it's sad because
Right.
I would like it, but in order for me to have a relationship with him, my boundary is acknowledge you beat the shit out of me. Acknowledge you berated me. Acknowledge that I had fear of you for a very long time after I left, and I did. And then that was just the process and no longer look over my shoulder and be scared. Then it was another 15 years after that, which was 2 years ago, to just kind of come to terms with what the hell happened. Why am I at this point in my life? And these are the things we're not allowed to talk out loud. I remember when I came back from sabbatical last
No.
May or March last year, I started talking about my trauma. And my dad calls my mom and says, our son's lying about me on the internets. And my mom just told him to go, you know where, and hung up on him. But like it's amazing the let's sweep it under the rug because the family name is more important than the truth.
Oh, I so remember that, because as a child, I didn't have friends over because, I never knew what kind of mood. We never knew. It's like,
For me, I never had a girlfriend for that reason. I was refusing to bring home any girl, and I had a few offers, but I refused because I didn't want them to be exposed to him. And God knows, like every time I
right.
was around a girl I kind of liked, he would like embarrass me. And it's like, I'm not going to bring a girl home
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, I had one best friend in school, and she came over. Of course, her household was almost the same way, so she kind of
Yeah.
understood. But I wasn't allowed to go out. I wasn't allowed to have friends over. I wasn't allowed to have phone calls. We walked around on
Yes.
eggshells, and it was like you sit there and freeze until I got, and I'm real good at reading people
Yes.
now because I can
Yes.
read. I can
And
tell. It's like, yes, yes, and you just sit there and you don't say anything, and you're going, you know, that's helped in my career somewhat, but
what's your career?
well, it was
Oh,
caregiving,
yeah.
but since I had to stay home, with
Yes, I can
dad.
see like families in a store, like a grocery store, and if the mom or the dad is upset at the kids, I can literally see it in their eyes because I'm used to seeing when things are kind of cool and when things are not cool at all, and there's just kind of this glare that's going on. You know something's
Yeah, and you can read the
yes.
kids
You can
too
tell if the kids are
because
terrified or if they're happy. I was going to the chiropractor yesterday, I believe it was, and this really nice lady came in with her 2 or 3 year old girl, and the girl was just so happy and climbing all over things. I was like, that is one happy kid. They're taking care of her at home.
right, right. But as we grow older, we kind of look back on these things and we kind of question, why did I go through
Yes,
that? Why, why
yes,
me? We had the why me, and I did that for a while, and here recently, I've learned, okay, my story is not like anybody else's. My story is unique, so I can tell my story and I could possibly help somebody with my story. I don't know exactly what you went through, because I'm not you, but we have similar things, so I can say, okay, yes, I
yes,
understand, or here's what happened to me. And, I was like, okay, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to do is
yeah,
help people with the my therapist not too long ago, she said, eating disorder, and I just kind of went, wait, no, you mean addiction. And then I asked my husband, and he's like, well, why can't it be both? And I'm just like, Oh, yeah. Well, why
Tell me
can't?
how it manifests as an eating disorder.
Well, right now, and I have been 1 year, no sugar, no carbs, no nothing. That's how I got my boots. Um, but you know, it's still I still obsess over foods, because I'm like strict carnivore. I have a lot of foods that I can't eat because of allergies. But it's like, okay, I look at these foods going, okay, these are safe foods. These are not safe foods. And I am even doing it to my grandkids, which I want them to be healthy because they're on the standard American diet, and I want them to be healthy, but at the same time, I'm kind of like micro managing, like, oh, you can't eat that, or oh,
Yeah. It,
that's still that's gone past like the addiction into an eating
all right.
disorder.
So, I mean, it's so hard, especially when you've made a change and then you've got grandkids who are on a far different diet than you eat. And so you want to help impart good nutrition on them. But when they get home, your daughter and her husband are feeding them a different way. So you're kind of defeating the purpose. I suppose you could teach a little bit along the way of, if you want to be powerful and strong, you want to eat protein, and
Right.
protein is the way you kind of build the muscle and you get strong and you get smart and blah, blah, blah. And kind of set those kind of images. But you're only asking for conflict with your daughter if you try to force maybe some of those things on. And not that I'm saying that you are, but I know some parents that do kind of go keto or carnivore and they go overboard, grandparents, and trying to indoctrinate their grandkids of, hell, off the
Right.
sugar,
Right.
that's bad. So there is no like good or bad in that context unless you have those conversations with your daughter.
Well, and with my mom, she had high blood pressure. She was diabetic. And she had health problems. She was also, allergic to peanut butter, but she sneak around and eat peanut butter. And the way we would know is she would scratch
Yeah.
her head because she would break
Yes.
out. And I kept telling her, I said, Mama, I said, don't you want to be around for your grandkids to see them graduate? And it got into a screaming match to where she looked at me and said, "It's my
Yeah.
body." And I was just like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. It is."
Look, as much as we want to save our loved ones, they ultimately do make their choices. And your mom made choices that unfortunately 3 years ago killed her. And my brother,
It did.
what's it been, 13 years since he passed away at the age of 41 from morbid obesity, heart disease, diabetes. And he knew about I had lost weight on the Atkins diet just 3 years prior to that, 4 years prior to that. And so he had tried low carb and had done it and da da da, but he started feeling good and he's like, okay, I'm all better. I can go back to eating the way I ate before. And it was just so sad, especially when it's family and you see them and you love them and you care about them and you want them to kind of find the success that you did, and then they go down and choose their own path. Like, we can't take that personally.
Right. And I think that that's what I did because I was trying my best because that's how I show people that I care is by doing for
Yes.
them. Of course, I'm also a people pleaser and all like that, but I'm working on that one.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
But
I'm sorry. Forgive me for asking, but how old are you?
I am
Girl,
49.
you're my age. We listen.
Yes.
We don't give a fuck about what anybody.
The older I get, the more I'm just like, because you start to wonder, do they
Yeah.
like me? What? And I'm
No.
just like, do I like them?
No. I have long not cared. Uh, I'm going to impart that
I'm
today.
learning.
You don't care.
I'm, I'm learning.